Okay, today we're gonna start diaphragm. So diaphragm is the most important muscle of the respiration. It is a dome-shaped muscle. It has two parts. The first part is the peripheral muscular part. Okay, so let me show you. So you can see here, this is a muscular part, as well as it has another part which is the centrally placed tendon. So you can see it's a tendon. Hence, we can call it a musculotendinous structure. It means it has muscles as well as the centrally placed tendon. And as I told you, it is an important muscle of respiration. So it means that it has a very important role in the respiration in increasing and decreasing the diameter, which is a vertical diameter. Okay. And then, okay, I will discuss the functions of the diaphragm later. But first, just heading towards the important points of it. Now, the origin points. So basically, it has three origin parts. The first is the sternal part, second is the costal part, and third is the vertebral part. So as you can see in this figure right here, this is actually our inferior view, okay? This is the inferior view of the diaphragm. And here you can see it is a xiphoid process of the sternum, and actually the sternal part, the origin of the diaphragm. So basically it describes that the diaphragm, it originates from this part, which is the sternal part, okay, because it originates from here, the xiphoid process, okay. And the coastal part shows that it arises from here. This is the coastal region. You can see the ribs, these are the ribs, and these are the costal cartilages, okay. So it means the diaphragm, it originates from the costal cartilages right here, okay, on this side as well as this. It means right and left on both sides. Now, talking of the three origin parts of the diaphragm, the first is the sternal part, second is the costal part, and the third one is the vertebral part. So it has three origin parts. Now let me show you in the diagram. So here is the sternal part. This is the costal part, and this is the vertebral part. Now let me just describe this. So this is the sternal part. So actually from the sternum, it arises from posterior of the xiphoid process. Here you can see the xiphoid process, which is a bone, okay? And this one is the cartilaginous part of the xiphoid process. So basically the diaphragm arises from the posterior surface of the xiphoid process. So this describes the sternal part. Now as we move towards the costal part, so the costo means ribs, and here you can see the ribs as well as the costal cartilages, and the same on the right side. Sorry, this is the left side, okay? On both sides you can see both of these structures. So the costal part, it describes that the diaphragm, it arises from the six ribs, the lower six ribs as well as their costal cartilages. So this is the costal part from where the diaphragm arises, from both sides, okay, from the either sides. Now the vertebral part. So as we move towards the vertebral part, we can see that we can find crura here, the right and the left crura, okay, the right and the left crus, and the medial ligament here, while the lateral arcuate ligament here. So actually there are three arcuate ligaments. This one is the median arcuate ligament, which is formed from the crura, the left and the right crus, okay. And as we move laterally, we can find the medial arcuate ligament here as well as the lateral arcuate ligament. So the purpose of telling you all about this is to tell you the vertebral part, the vertebral origin of the diaphragm, that the diaphragm arises from these all three ligaments. It means the median arcuate ligament, the medial arcuate ligament, and the lateral arcuate ligament, as well as from the crura, which means the right and the left crus. Now talking of its insertion point, so diaphragm inserts on only one place. That is, let me show you here in the figure. That inserts only on the centrally placed tendon. Okay, so this part, this is the insertion of the diaphragm. Okay, now the next thing is, as I've already told you about the crura and the arcuate ligaments. So the crura is basically the plural of the crus. As you know that the diaphragm has left and the right crus, so it has crura. Okay, and the next thing is the arcuate ligaments. So I told you that it has three arcuate ligaments. How many? Three. Okay, now again looking at the figure. So here is the right crus and this is the left crus. So you can say that this is crura. Okay, these are the cruras of the diaphragm. Now the three arcuate ligaments. This is what I've told you before already. Okay, so arcuate ligament, basically the arcuate ligament that is formed from the crura is the median arcuate ligament. This one is the median. Okay, this one is the median arcuate ligament. As we move laterally, we can find a medial arcuate ligament, okay, on both sides. And as we move more laterally, we can find a lateral arcuate ligament here and here. Okay, now let me tell you more about the arcuate ligaments. So this one is the median arcuate ligament and it crosses over the anterior surface of the aorta. So here is the aorta and it crosses over the anterior surface of aorta. And it connects the medial border of the crura. So these are crura and it connects the medial border of them. Now as we move laterally, we can find the medial arcuate ligament. And this medial arcuate ligament, it extends from the side of the body of the L2 vertebra. You can see it here. This is the lumbar vertebra. So the medial arcuate ligament, it extends from the side of the body of the L2 vertebra and from there to the transverse process of the L1. Okay, so it extends from the side of the body of the L2 vertebra, which is the second lumbar vertebra, to the transverse process of the first lumbar vertebra. Now the lateral arcuate ligament. This lateral arcuate ligament, it extends from this point where the medial arcuate ligament ended, right? So from this point, which is the first lumbar vertebra's transverse process, okay, the transverse process of the first lumbar vertebra, from there to the 12th rib. So I have told you about this medial arcuate ligament. We have discussed the medial arcuate ligament and the lateral arcuate ligament. Now the nerve supply of the diaphragm. So the diaphragm is supplied by the phrenic nerve. Its root value is 3 to 5. It means C3 to C5. Okay, it's of the cervical. So this is very important thing. So you should remember this, that the nerve supply of the diaphragm is the phrenic nerve, which is C3 to C5. And I should write here, it's C, okay? The action of the diaphragm. So diaphragm is responsible for the four main activities, four main actions, you can say. The first one is it is the muscle of inspiration. So muscle of inspiration, how it is a muscle of inspiration, how it is playing a role in the inspiration. So basically, on contraction, the diaphragm pulls its central tendon down and increases the vertical diameter of the thorax. So it's like, you can see this is a diaphragm. Okay, when you know that when we inspire, when we take in air, so what actually happens, that this whole thoracic cavity, it is enlarged. Okay, and how it happens, that basically this diaphragm, it is contracted. Okay, it is contracted inwards. So in this way, this all process happens. In this way, it increases the capacity, we can say the space inside the thorax, and making the more space, making more room for the incoming air. Okay, in this way it plays a role in inspiration. Now how it is a muscle of abdominal straining. Okay, straining means the pressure. Abdominal straining means that the diaphragm would work in such a way that it will increase the abdominal pressure. And how it performs this function. So basically the contraction of the diaphragm assists the contraction of muscles of anterior abdominal wall, okay, in raising the intra-abdominal pressure for the micturition, defecation, parturition. It means that when the diaphragm contracts, actually what it does, it puts or it exerts the pressure on the contents of the abdomen, and it in turn increases what the intra-abdominal pressure. In this way, it helps the micturition, parturition, or like those processes. Okay. Now the weightlifting muscle, how it's a weightlifting muscle. So in a person taking a deep breath and holding it, he actually does what? Fixes the diaphragm. So the diaphragm assists the muscles of the interior abdominal wall in raising the intra-abdominal pressure to such an extent that it helps support the vertebral column and prevents its flexion. So basically, it's like when the person takes in air, and as we know that when we hold our breath, so what we do actually is we fix our diaphragm. Okay, and when the diaphragm is fixed, the intra-abdominal pressure increases. And this increase in pressure does what? It actually prevents the vertebral column to flex. It means that it supports the vertebral column and it prevents the vertebral column to flex, okay? Or from the flexion, you can say. Now, the fourth action of the diaphragm is the thoraco-abdominal pump. So, how it functions as a pump. So, thoraco-abdominal pump, what it means. Okay, so basically the descent of the diaphragm decreases the intrathoracic pressure. It means when the diaphragm contracts, actually it does what? The intrathoracic pressure will be decreased, of course, on its contraction. When it will descend, the space of the thorax will increase. In this way, the pressure will decrease. Okay, and it increases while on the other hand, it increases the intra-abdominal pressure, and this mechanism assists the return of the venous blood. And what this will do, that it will increase the venous blood. It means the blood that will return to the heart from the body, okay, the venous blood, as well as this mechanism is the return of the venous blood and inferior vena cava to the right atrium and the passage of the lymph upward in the thoracic duct. It means basically this pump function. What it will do, it will pump the lymph, okay, and as well as the venous blood. So this is the main function of the diaphragm. Now the openings of the diaphragm. The diaphragm has three major openings as well as some other minor openings, but now here we are talking about the three major openings, okay? So the first one is the aortic opening, the second one is the esophageal opening, and the third one is the caval opening. So let us see from the book, okay, from the diagram. So this one is the aortic opening. So you can see the aorta passing through it, right? This one is the esophageal opening, okay, and through it, as the name indicates, esophageal opening, so the esophagus passes through it, okay, as well as there are many other structures, so I'll tell you later. And this one is the caval opening. It is named on the basis of inferior vena cava, okay, so inferior vena cava passes through it. So now the aortic opening, it lies at the level of the T12, right, and the main thing that passes through it is aorta. Esophageal opening, it lies at the level of T10, which is the 10th thoracic vertebra, right? And the main thing that passes through it is esophagus, while this is the caval opening, which lies at the level of T8, the 10th thoracic vertebra. And the main thing that passes through it is the inferior vena cava. Now the other structures that passes through the aortic opening, or you can also call the opening as hiatus, okay? So opening or hiatus are the same thing. So the other structures that passes through the aortic opening are the thoracic duct and azygous vein. Okay, thoracic duct, azygous vein, and aorta. So these are the three structures that passes through the aortic opening. Now this is the esophageal opening, and it lies at the level of the T10, and it is made from the muscle fibers of the right crura. So here you can see that this muscle is basically the continuation of the right crura here. And other structures that passes through this opening are right and left vagus nerves and esophageal branches of the left gastric vessels and the lymphatic vessels of the lower third esophagus. Now the cable opening. This cable opening, it lies at the level of the T8. Okay, it lies at the level of T8. And main thing I told you that inferior vena cava passes through it, and the other structures are actually just the terminal branches of right phrenic nerve passes through it. Now, as I told you that many other structures also pierce this muscular part of the diaphragm, and those three structures are the splanchnic nerve, superior epigastric vessels, and the sympathetic trunk. Okay, as I told you that the diaphragm has other minor perforations or a small opening, you can say. So these are the three structures which actually pierce it through those perforations. So this one is the splanchnic nerve, and the second one is a superior epigastric vessels, and the other things are sympathetic trunk. Okay, so let me show you with this diagram. Okay, so this one is a sympathetic trunk, you can see here, and it is present posteriorly. Okay, it is present posterior to what? The medial arcuate ligament. Okay, this is a medial arcuate ligament, and so this is a sympathetic trunk, and it is present posteriorly to it. Now these are some branches you can see of the nerves, and these are the splanchnic nerves. Okay, this one is the least, so you can see it here, least thoracic splanchnic nerve. This one is of the lesser, and this one is of the greater splanchnic nerve. You can see it here respectively. And some superior epigastric vessels also pierce it between the sternal part and the costal parts.